Welcome to Yahai Story Channel, with daily story updates. Remember to subscribe. The story begins. In order to accompany his godsister to fulfill her bucket list, he filed for divorce from me and made an AI robot to keep me company. It can bring you spiritual comfort during this time of your loneliness. Don't worry, it's intelligent and can definitely satisfy you. I asked him with wide eyes, if it's so smart, why don't you give him to your sister? A trace of unnaturalness flashed across his face. How can a machine be compared to a human? I want her to feel my warmth. Don't worry, when she is gone, I will be you for the rest of my life. 3 months later, my godsister didn't die, and he approached me to remarry. The boyfriend who turned into a robot looked at me in his arms and favored me with a smile. The little thing has been fed by me, she is very satisfied. You get lost, scum. I was busy helping Lu Yuan overhaul his newly developed intelligent robot when I received a WeChat from him. Wanwan, doesn't he have many days left? I am so sad. My hand froze, and a line nearly took a wrong ride. Immediately after that, the next sentence was even more so, making me fall into the ice cellar. Let's divorce for a while, I want to give her a complete dream. I stared blankly at the screen, unable to believe the words I saw in front of me. Lu Yuan, this new intelligent robot, rushed to the line, and there are so many problems. I stayed up for 3 consecutive nights to fix it. I thought that when he stood on the stage to introduce this robot to his peers, he would be proud to have me as his smart and capable wife. But now, when I saw his news, it was as if I had been drenched with cold, biting water from the top of my head directly to the soles of my feet, and my enthusiasm had been doused. I've been working 5 cups of coffee a day, all night long, to work my ass off on his masterpiece. And yet, what was he doing? He was actually hanging on to that so-called godsister who had nothing to do with him at all. He's so hung up and sad about her that he's even divorcing me because of her. 7 years ago, he clearly said that I was the unique white moonlight in his heart. However, we've only been married for 2 years. He already has another woman, a canary that he spoils. I was so embarrassed. I called several times in a row, but each time no one answered. I opened the chat box, ready to send a message, only to realize that since when, the chat box is all green. I sat on the couch all night until dawn when he finally came home. His face revealed a look of exhaustion, at the same time, mixed with half sentimental and half unspeakable happiness. Seeing me sitting still, he froze slightly, and a trace of shyness flashed in his eyes. In the past, he would be concerned about why I stayed up all night again, and make me a cup of sour jujube tea, and then gently coax me to bed. But today, his mind seems to be completely off of me, and he only has that important thing on his mind. You should have seen the news already. Let's go for a divorce. He paused for a moment, as if watching for my reaction. I had thought that he would apologize to me. After all, he was the one who pursued me so hard in the first place. Now how could he fall in love with another woman so easily? But the truth has left me disheartened, and it needs to be done as soon as possible. Wanwan, she can't wait. He went on to say, firm and resolute. Hearing these words, I raised my head and looked at him. Although there were 1,000 words in my heart that I wanted to express, it was as if a fishbone was stuck in my throat. Not a single word could be said. He saw that I did not say anything. He understood that I am a person who eats soft but does not eat hard, so he had no choice but to crouch down, lower his posture and coax me gently. Yuan, I know you are not happy, but I have to do this. Wanwan, she is innocent and lovely, and I just want to help her fulfill her bucket list. Don't worry, after she is gone, we will remarry, okay? As he said this, he buried his face into my palm, trying to soften my heart in this way that I could not resist. However, everything he did was only for that sister whom he had known for only half a year. Yuan, I always love you. I finally opened my mouth when I heard him say those words again. I let out a voice with difficulty. What about your launch? Once, he hugged me tightly and swore that he would bring the robot we developed together and make a big splash at the launch. By then, the whole industry will be amazed. He valued his career more than his life. At that time, I would only smile sweetly and then devote myself to developing chips for him. From design, software, hardware to maintenance, I did almost everything by myself. Even though these robots don't have my signature, I still have no regrets. Over the years, I have been willing to be the woman behind him, holding him up as the prince of robots. As long as I see him in high spirits surrounded by journalists and peers, I will be satisfied. In the thick of it, he once sent me a quote. Do the woman behind the man, is the recognition of you, is the meaning of you as the other half of the marriage. Generally say this kind of words are a more powerful, capable people, let you be a good wife, help him take care of everything, so that he is not distracted to struggle for their own career, and you. You just need to support him in his endeavors. Yuan, I am so happy to have you. At that time, I was overwhelmed by love. I was happy to have you. But now, I realize that I have worked so hard to plant a tree, but when it's time to harvest, all the fruits on the tree have been picked by others. And I can only stand aside and watch, he and other women to share my fruit. He wore a gentle smile and shook his head. Wan's dream is more important than the release party. You can help me cancel it. I froze, like I was recognizing him for the first time. He said to me, Yuan, I know you may be jealous, but you have to believe me, I have really tried my best. As a man, I have the responsibility to protect and take care of her. I hope you can understand my choice, okay? He grabbed my hand. Look, I also took your feelings into consideration and developed a new robot especially for you. When you are lonely, he can satisfy you. Until this moment, I did not realize that behind him stood a tall, handsome, deep features still with a bit of evil machine man. The robot opened its mouth, a thick and low voice, Z007 robot, natural anthropomorphic state, what your husband cannot do, I can do. Yuan did his best to introduce the advantages of this robot to me, gushing, not noticing my increasingly cold eyebrows. As an expert in the field of robotics, how could I easily let a bunch of cold data take on my deepest emotional attachment? I gazed at Yuan and coldly responded, since this robot is so intelligent, why don't you simply give it to your dear sister? Give me a dummy and send her a warmth? His expression instantly became stiff, and his eyes showed complex emotions that were tangled. I, on the other hand, watched him quietly, not interrupting the fierce struggle within him. I wanted to see who was important in his heart. Time passed by, and finally, he gave me the result. Bring the marriage license. I made an appointment for the divorce in the afternoon, and I won't sleep here tonight. He did not hide the anxiety in his heart and the expectation of a new love in the future. He put everything in place and gave the woman the utmost decency. At the expense of my dignity. We have known each other for 7 years, married for 2 years, but in the end, we can't resist the sky falling green tea. But I still want to struggle. It's not like the old days. Hospice care is mature. You can give her money and help her hire a hospice nurse. Dying loved ones can play the part as long as you give them a lot of money, and bucket lists are just child's play. I know a company that has great reviews and is very skilled in their business. At the end of the day, I got emotional. You cheated on me, you could have just said so, no need to use this whole excuse. Yuan. He interrupted me without mercy, I'm not noble, but you're not bad either, are you? Don't think I don't know that you've been thinking about your ex-boyfriend who you've been sharing a table with for 3 years, and to this day you refuse to throw away that ring he gave you. I looked at him with a face full of shock. I don't throw away Ching Ozhou's ring only because he is truly dying. It's not like Yuan didn't know, and he had long ago said that he didn't care. Realizing his cold and hard tone, Yuan froze, and then hugged me tightly. I am sorry, I only give her 3 months, and the rest of my life after that, I belong to you. Everything came too fast. Before I could react, the divorce agreement and pen were shoved into my hand. I looked at my own hands, fast, steady, and calm, the most suitable hands to operate a photolithography machine and make chips. These hands made chips for Yuan for 7 years. Yet now, I was actually going to use it to sign the divorce agreement. Before I put pen to paper, I looked up, gazed at Yuan's eyes, and calmly asked, Yuan, do you think I will always love you to death? I solemnly reminded him, you have to think carefully, once you take this. Once you take this step, I paused. We can't go back. Yuan's hand holding the tip of the pen trembled slightly, but he finally signed his name firmly. Yuan, stop it. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I'm not making a scene, you are. His face was a bit ugly, but he still didn't say anything. I picked up the pen and gently wrote the last word on the paper to bring 7 years of dedication come to an end. It's all over. Before saying goodbye, he tried to kiss me down, but I inclined my head to avoid it. He was a bit surprised, he didn't expect me to do that. Yuan, wait for me to come back. His eyes revealed a hint of deep love and reluctance, but I just looked at him coldly. Of course I knew what he meant when he said that, he needed me like a fish needs water. As for me, losing him is nothing more than losing love. Without me, his career will fall to pieces and he will become a mess. And without him, I will rise to the top. By then, he can only look up to me from below and regret it. He thought that I would always be his mud, his candle. Unfortunately, he was wrong. I don't wait. My voice was soft, but it was full of determination. After saying these words, I turned around and left, leaving him standing alone. Starting today, the stupid robot queen who has been silent for 7 years for love will make a comeback. Dragging my empty body back home, I was ready to get a good night's sleep. Just as I closed my eyes, I heard a hard and ancient mechanical sound, detecting the owner coming home and activating the on button. It dawned on me that there was an extra machine man in the house. The robot pulls me up from the bed with a perfect, 3 parts cool, 4 parts sneer, 7 parts careless smile. Woman, now, immediately and instantly, give this young man me a cool and wild name. I looked incredulously at the outdated and raw overlord personality robot in front of me. Ling Yi, 5th Knight, Huangfu He, you pick one. He caught me off guard and pinched my chin, forcing me to look up at him. Little bunny boy, call me Ling Knight He. This robot, just like Lu Yuan, is full of problems. He is always talking out of place, saying love words that are so earthy they fall to the ground. And he's always saying some earthy love words in public at the wrong time, which makes me embarrassed. And, with the slightest thought, it would give a shrill overload warning and then just die. What's even more intolerable is the endless list of troubles this guy creates. He could burn the stove to ashes while cooking, start singing in the middle of the night, wake me up from my sleep, and even stomp on the brand new parts one had crafted. Another time, when I was performing the last step of the chip development, he accidentally touched the instrument mechanism, causing the whole chip to burn up. I had to spend a lot of time and effort to redevelop it. And he stood by, looking at me with an innocent face and comforting me with earthy words. I had no choice but to completely refurbish the lab and purposely install a coded door to prevent a similar incident from happening again. It was driving me crazy. Why did I keep a scumbag in my thoughts? I have to tear him down and reinstall him. I thought like this, but I didn't notice that behind me, Cold Night He's pupils flashed with a weird light, and I seemed to hear the mechanical sound of the proposed brain processor running at high speed. The next day, I woke up from my sleep and realized that the ground was littered with broken metal limbs, parts, and chips. My breath stopped for a split second. The last time this happened was when Lu Yuan's self-developed robot blew itself up due to substandard safety devices. I anxiously shouted, Ling Knight He. The living room was empty, no one responded. I shouted again, come out, if you don't listen to your master's orders, the disintegration program will be executed. Cold Night Underworld only then slowly turned off the invisibility function. I questioned him, what are these broken parts? He paused and, forced by the principle of robotic candor, spilled the truth to me. During the time I had been sleeping, he had, surprisingly, smashed the improved version of the K909 robot that I had been working on all night. Simply because, he read my mind to dismantle him, and then, out of the principle of self-preservation set by Lu Yuan, he took the house that could be used for modification and parts were all destroyed. I froze. The mind-reading function was specially developed by me for use in the companion robots for the mentally challenged. The mind-reading chip is extremely valuable, but Lu Yuan used it to read me. The self-protection principle set by Lu Yuan was only loyal to its creator. And I, after Lu Yuan's betrayal, will never allow there to be another person with 2 masters at my side. With a sullen face, I backhandedly removed his proposed brain processor. Lu Yuan's attainment, how can it compare to mine? If I wanted to make a move on Ling Knight He, it would only be a matter of minutes. I removed Lu Yuan's mark from the brain processor, changed the dense problems and dark diseases inside, and casually touched the only 2 parts that hadn't been destroyed and installed them as upgraded configurations. Cold Night He's pupils slightly lit up with blue light, and the program started normally. Just as I was about to loudly reprimand him, but suddenly, the pupil light turned a blinding red. This was a warning of a malfunction. I frowned. If you rock the machine by removing the Lu Yuan seal, then what's the use of this robot? I ignored him and directly squatted on the ground, attempting to repair the K909 that had turned into thin air. It wasn't until sunset rose that I finished my work, and when I opened my cell phone, I found a missed oceanic call. I faintly witnessed that there was only one friend of far oceans. But, after not seeing him for 10 years, I'm afraid that in case he has long forgotten me, perhaps, he's long dead. Maybe it's a scam. My hand that originally wanted to call back turned to flip through the circle of friends. Only to find that Lu Yuan from leaving, every 10 minutes, send a dynamic. Each picture is either holding 10 fingers with Fong Wan, or snuggling and hugging. Those who didn't know, thought he was on his honeymoon. The accompanying text is full of compassion and deep love, warming her every second, hoping that in my next life, someone will warm her for me. What a true smile. I dare not accept the fact that you are about to disappear. You are the most beautiful water lily I have ever met. They went to the sea to watch the sunrise and sunset, went to the prairie to ride a horse together, and prayed to the gods on the desert to pray to the gods. Each photo is so touching. Heaven and earth, mountains and seas, streams and rivers. The proud princess and the tall, beautiful king. Vivid, bright, and clear. Fingertips lingered on the latest one in motion, and another sharp pain shot through my newly pieced-together heart. They were dressed in the grand and heavy wedding clothes of ethnic minorities, kneeling to worship heaven and earth, intense and sacred. May I ask which god would hold back from blessing them? I don't know how long I had been watching, but the cell phone was suddenly jerked away. A low sigh of dorkiness rang out above my head. I looked up sharply. Only one person would call me a dork. Cold Night Hay didn't know when he had returned to normal, his inked pupils quietly looking at me. I returned to my senses. How is it possible? Ching Ozhou is afraid that he is already dead. Don't look at the scum, look at me. The tears on my face were kissed away, wet and fine. He is not worth it. I covered my eyes and bit my lips, and then thought that there was only a cold robot in the house, and there was no shame in crying, so I let go of my voice and wailed. You don't know how much I sacrificed for him, how much youth I wasted. Since falling in love with him, I gave up all the opportunities to sign my name and show my face, and poured all my resources into him, but he got a taste of the sweetness and thought it was what he deserved? Cold night meditation against my forehead. Don't cry, I'm better than him. I looked into his eyes, slightly. Surprisingly, I read heartache in the robot's eyes, as well as lost and regained elation. It couldn't be. A robot's visual apparatus would never show human emotion. He let me caress those deep eyes. I command you, disintegrate on your own. There is no research in the world related to robot self-awareness, because robots simply do not develop self-awareness. However, it is generally accepted that the hallmark event for a robot to develop self-awareness is the appearance of rebellious behavior. He looked at me for a long time, as if he wanted to engrave me into his mind, and then, in a mute voice, he said, "Good, I will always be loyal to my master." With that, he flipped the switch in his chest and stroked up the glowing blue lighted disintegration button. My heart missed half a beat. In the end, I still stopped him. Forget it, maybe I was wrong. I don't know if it was just a blur, but before I turned around, I saw that he seemed to be breathing a sigh of relief. Since that day, Cold Night Hay seemed to have undergone some changes. In his original visual device that only glowed blue, there were more emotions that only humans could have. He would be satisfied when I ate all of his fried dishes, he would be pleased when I complimented him on his good singing, and when I slept, he hugged me from behind, with the desire that only a human male would have in his eyes. When I called him Lin Night Hay, his expression would freeze for half an instant, and then he would respond in shame and helplessness. One day, he suddenly turned out the ring necklace that I hid at the bottom of the cabinet. Originally, he was still angry because I refused to buy him new underwear, and he wore. The ones he was wearing were all left over from Lu Yuan's wear, and they were a bit tight for him. His eyes became as gentle as moonlight. Then he blearily pulled out a bunch of postcards pressed under the ring and read them one by one. I want to change my name, and I think the word Qing Shuzhou is very good. Qing represents a bright future, O represents farewell to the past and a new beginning, and Chao represents a solid territory and I love my country. I'm busy with welding, I don't even look up. Isn't the word cold night hey something you want it yourself? No, I like cold night meditation. He had 3 days mouth. Moreover, he has always been obedient even when I cannot reach the top of the cabinet oatmeal, ridicule me, tsk, small short melon, without me you can do. I opened my eyes wide, you're tall, you're 5 feet 9 inches, you're awesome. But I'm not so bad, I'm 6'8" inch. He smiled and rubbed my head, and then said something. I realized later that he was 2 centimeters taller. More often than not, when I was working on a new robot, he would look at me and wonder what he was thinking. This day I woke up in the middle of the night without him on my pillow. I was suddenly a bit empty. Cold night hey. No invisibility. I started counting the seconds in my mind. 1, 2, 3. The bathroom door squeaked, and Cold Night Hey stepped out naked. The muscles of his entire body were tight and perfect but not in debt. Beads of water flowed along the texture of his muscles and, bubbling with hot vapor. I quickly took my hand to block my eyes. Instead, a pair of hot, wet hands grabbed them down and I was forced to look squarely into his near-crying face. My face went cold and 2 droplets of water dripped down his wet hair onto the bridge of my nose. I pumped myself up. What to be afraid of, he was just heaps of metal. As he kept if anything coming closer to me, touching me, eventually, I realized that. On his body, a manly scent that only humans can have appeared, one akin to tobacco. It was a scent that was even hotter, tingling, and more comfortable than Lu Yuan. That was clearly something only humans could have, a pheromone odor. The buttons in my hand were accidentally ripped off and snapped to the floor, my sexy chest half hidden. Cold Night Hey kissed my earlobe and said vaguely, "Nerd, do you like it?" I bit my lip and tried to maintain the remaining sanity in my head. The second rule of robot ethics, robots never make sexual partners. But I was born to fulfill you. His voice was low and hoarse like a compulsion. Before I closed my eyes, I used my afterglow to see the photo of Lu Yuan and I on the bed. It's a real bummer. He followed my gaze and looked over. Originally stained with lust, eyes instantly cooled. He seems to be a little unhappy. Get up, behind my back to count the crows on the trees outside the window. That back figure looks like Qing Ouzhou. I suddenly realized that lately I always think of Qing Ouzhou. I asked him, why don't you talk about love these days? He inclined his head. Do you like it? He inclined his head. Do you like it? He face expressionless, clattering blah blah blah. I am charming man, you are charming. Do I have to learn welding to make you look good? For people like you, there's nothing to talk about but love. Me. Why is he sour in every sentence? He turned his head to look at me, stared for half a second, suddenly said, "You have not returned my message for a second. Do not love even if, there is no need for cold violence." I was powerless to swing my hand. Stop, is my mouth cheap? After 2 days, the bedside photo suddenly disappeared. Not only that, the things left by Lu Yuan in the house were all cleaned up by Cold Night Hey for various reasons, such as mold, circuit burnt paste, and broken. Then, when he had just finished his bath, before he put on his clothes, he hugged me and took a picture of me. Took a lustful group photo, and took it upon himself to post it to his friends. Since retiring from the scene, I've been socialized like an orphan. Not many people would come to me, so I went along with it. But I didn't expect to get a call from Lu Yuan not long after I posted it. Who is he? Not the robot you sent me? He was a hip. Yuan, he's just a robot, he can only be a spiritual comfort. I interrupted him. Didn't you say that he can satisfy me instead of you? You. Before he could continue, a soft female voice interrupted what he was about to say. Lu brother, the bath water is warm, waiting for you. Ah. The two were silent for a moment. Suddenly came the weight on the waist, the shoulder was bitten hard. I ate the pain and exclaimed in shock. I even forgot to hang up the phone, so I twisted my head and cursed Cold Night Hey. Cold Night Hey. You lighten up, I'm in pain. Dense kisses fell like rain. He asked in a low voice in my ear, which just happened to be also by the cell phone, little nerd, now what? Are you comfortable? Wariness, curled up, my voice was crashed to pieces. I don't know when the phone hung up, all I remember is that he, more than Lu Yuan, knows every inch of me. Not only that, in terms of sweetness, in terms of body shape, in terms of looks, he actually won across the board when compared to Lu Yuan. I trembled as I turned over the robot ethics. The first rule, human beings are always prioritized. I was instantly confused. A long list was placed in front of me, and the handwriting on it was dragon-flying and dashing like the wind. It was very much like Qing Ozhou's writing. I looked up and asked Ling Nighthei, "What is this?" "Bucket list, we can't lose to a green tea, what others have, we must have too." I looked at him like a fool. "Please mobilize the database to check what is meant by a bucket list. Are you going to die?" "I'm not going to be able to do that, but I'm going to be able to do it," he said. His long eyelashes trembled slightly. "Haha, then it is called, almost forget the wish list. The first thing written on the almost forgotten wish list is to return to the top of the robotics industry." I smiled. "You've got a good name for it." I called Chen Fong. Next week's conference, held as usual. Chen Fong is a little hesitant, but Professor Liu has already. I said word for word, so, for next week's launch, I, in the name of Song Yuan, will personally go on stage. I added, only those who have received an invitation will be allowed in. Chen Fong obediently answered, 3 minutes later, and immediately called back, "Mrs. Liu, Professor Liu is not on the list?" And also specifically marked that he is not allowed to enter? My tone was cold. "First, I have divorced Lu Yuan, no longer allowed to call me Mrs. Liu, my name is Song Yuan. Second, strictly in accordance with the requirements of the list, there are still questions?" Chen Fong is Lu Yuan's personal assistant, but he is also very smart. He will follow whoever can bring him money. He answered quickly, "No problem, Mr. Song, congratulations, you are about to have your first signed robot." In the quiet air, Cold Nighthei laughed a little too loudly. I couldn't put my cell phone down in time, and Lu Yuan's frantic tapping sounded outside the door. At the same time, Cold Nighthei quickly made a mess of the entire house like a bolt of lightning, as if the place had just experienced a fierce battle. Only then did he slowly wrap a bath towel around him and go to open the door. The moment the door opened, Lu Yuan's face turned green. He angrily questioned me, "Why did you change the locks?" I didn't even bother to raise my eyelids, and replied indifferently, "You wrote it clearly in the divorce agreement that I own this house. What's wrong with me changing the locks on my own door?" Lu Yuan's face became more and more gloomy and difficult to see. He looked around the house, his eyes finally rested on the 2 conspicuous red transparent bra on the floor. The whole person almost did not stand still. After a moment of silence, Lu Yuan took a deep breath, made a deep look of love, and said to me, "I am back, let's go remarry." I was surprised. This ex-husband, I have long said that I will not remarry. He thought that I was in a temper, and he came over to try to hold me, but he was pushed away by Cold Nighthei. "According to the heart-reading information, the owner no longer has any affection for you. Please ask this ex-husband to leave in 5 minutes, otherwise, I will have to call the police to deal with it." Lu Yuan was pushed in a bucking motion and fell straight to the floor, stiffly lifting his head and looked at me incredulously. He had never been so out of sorts. He shouted excitedly, "Impossible! Z007, I order you, reread the mind." Cold Nighthei repeated mechanically once again, "According to the heart-reading information, the owner has no affection for you. Please ask this ex-husband to leave in 5 minutes, otherwise, I will have to call the police to deal with it." I loaded the last part of K909, put down the experimental apparatus, removed my lab coat and microscopic glasses, and walked out from the experimental space. I looked at Lu Yuan, who fell to the ground. There was not a single ripple in my heart. I just said indifferently, "I have Ling Nighthei, you have a good sister, we are each at peace, and we will no longer disturb each other." Lu Yuan's face turned white, and even the pink metal headband that Fong Wan gave him on his hand fell and broke. He didn't even realize that the pink metal headband that Fong Wan had given him had broken, and then he stumbled over to me to hug me. I dodged behind Ling Yehei. Cold Nighthei was very competent. His body shape flashed, like a siege, trapping Lu Yuan in an impenetrable area. Lu Yuan shook his head repeatedly, his eyes looking straight at me. "Ah Yuan, I only love you, you know that." I laughed and laughed. "Love me? You and your beautiful water lily walked through the grassland, desert and beach, wore wedding clothes and worshipped heaven and earth, and then you say you love me?" He shook his head, trying to explain, "Yuan, I'm just taking care of her, she has leukemia, you know me, right?" You always used to know me best. I looked at him coldly. Sorry, I don't want to understand an ex-husband. He wanted to argue some more, but the phone suddenly rang and he had to stop arguing to answer it. He said to the phone in a warm and soft voice, Wan, don't cry, don't be sad. It's okay, I will always be by your side. This scene made me feel sick. I used to feel heartache, but now I only feel noise. Lu Yuan left in a state of despair. Before he left, I reminded him to take away the broken pink gold headband on the ground. Take your things with you, don't dirty my ground. His back stiffened violently, and he gently picked up the pink gold headband and left. Fong Wan used an anonymous number to send me a provocative message. Lu Yuan is mine, Mrs. Lu will only be me. I looked at the screen of my cell phone, the corners of my mouth slightly raised. Mrs. Lu, not a good intention. However, all of this was no longer important to me. The launch event was held successfully, gathering a large number of top industry experts and robotics entrepreneurs, who originally came for the fame of Prof. Lu, but were surprised to find that the one who was mouthing off on the stage and operating the robot with precision was Song Yuan, the queen of robots, who disappeared 7 years ago for no reason at all. The crowd under the stage looked at each other in disbelief, but I always wore a smile on my face and calmly explained the new functions of K909. One by one, the technical terms were transformed into concise and easy-to-understand language, and the audience on stage went from frowning to paying full attention, exchanging words, and even some entrepreneurs started to raise their cell phones to take pictures. I took a look. Those entrepreneurs are all robotics industry leaders, but also Lu Yuan's dream to get on the Prince. Although I brought Lu Yuan to do out of the top of the robot technology, but these princelings are still not willing to have too much to do with Lu Yuan. Communication only stays in the technology, and even the edge of the circle cannot get into. Only after cold night meditation smashed the old version of K909, I was able to discard all of Lu Yuan's foundations and redo them, and nowadays I own all the technical copyrights of K909. The appearance of me standing on the stage and talking eloquently spread rapidly from the small circle, and soon the news that the robot queen had disappeared for 10 years and made a comeback swept through the entire robotics industry. After the launch, experts and entrepreneurs surrounded me in 3 layers to get more contact information. Chen Fong smiled so much that he couldn't see his teeth. The salary I gave Chen Fong was based on profit sharing, and when Lu Yuan was around, he had never seen such a lively scene before. When they asked about Lu Yuan, Chen Fong smiled politely. Professor Lu has flown solo. The K909 copyright belongs to Mr. Song, including all subsequent technical reproduction, upgrading, maintenance. Everyone is a senior industry person. Listening to Chen Fong's words, combined with Lu Yuan's redding hair circle behavior during this period of time, they understood 7 or 8, and no longer mentioned Lu Yuan. Instead, they were very interested in Leng Yushi. This is also a robot? The shape is so nice. Which series? Chen Fong introduced. This one is C007. Before I could finish, I was interrupted. My name is Leng Nighthay. Leng Yihei raised his head proudly, as if to say that he was different from those robots that used code names. The experts collectively twitched their mouths when they heard the 3 words Leng Nighthay. They treated him as a pile of emotionless data and did not hide their dislike for the name. The name was really, haha, but it was still more interesting than Long Ao Tian. Leng Nighthay frowned. Please respect my name. Leng is a rigorous and rational academic attitude. Night is a calm and serene attitude towards life. Hey is the deep realization of life. The expert's fingers trembled, looking at my eyes as if looking at the gods. This robot has emotions. Emotions? Mr. Song, that's impossible. It's self-awareness. I'm very proud of myself. I'm going to release a paper on robot self-awareness. Please look forward to the specific research data. That launch was an unprecedented success. A dozen contracts were signed on the spot. I was still signing the last contract when Chen Fong suddenly frowned and told me that Lu Yuan was outside the door of the launch, arguing with the bodyguards and fighting. The impact was very bad. I rubbed my brow, and Leng Nighthay had already instantly moved from the group of experts to my side to guard at all times. Let him come in. Lu Yuan looked a bit distressed and kept straightening his hair and collar as he came over. He was followed by 2 people. The one in the white dress was Fong Wan, and the other that. I faintly. It was Ching Shuzhou's friend, Gino. Seeing me talking to the experts, Lu Yuan cleared his throat and pretended to to say hello. No one paid any attention to him. Ling Nighthay blocked in front of him, his height of 1 meter 9 set him off as short and lewd. Lu Yuan was silent for a while and suddenly went up to the stage, climbing the stairs and stumbling. Successfully attracted everyone's attention. He pretended to be calm and said aloud, "Dear colleagues and bosses, don't be fooled by her. K909 and Z007 are all developed by my hands. Song Yuan does not own the copyright at all." Yuan does not own the copyright at all. The crowd shut up. I looked at this man on the stage, arrogant, selfish and unaware. Why didn't I realize before? He's so trashy. I smiled graciously. Fine, then prove it to us. Lu Yuan lifted his chin and started bluffing. Fong Wan on the stage showed starry eyes, as if she was some kind of saint in front of her. But the next speech made the experts and entrepreneurs fall down. He introduced a series of old features, outdated and uninspired, not only does not meet the rapidly changing user needs, but also counterproductive. What's more, the features he introduced were completely different from what the audience had just experienced. He was completely unaware that K909 and Z007 had already completed their reorganization. Some experts had already started to look at their cell phones frequently to hide their embarrassment. Lu Yuan was still making a fool of himself. Z007, I am your creator, and I order you to dissolve the master-servant relationship with Song Yuan. He still doesn't know that I have removed the Lu Yuan imprint from Lin Yihei, and he still thinks that he is still the earthy robot that follows his orders. Cold Nighthay gave him a blank look and pulled out a lipstick to help me fix my makeup that had blotched off due to the long conversation. Some entrepreneurs are getting impatient. The robot unconditionally obeys the creator. Professor Lu, as I see it, Z007 only obeys Mr. Song. I think the answer to who the creator really is already obvious, so there's no need to waste time here, right? Yeah, and that's too hard a command. Who uses a waste of breath like I command you nowadays? I see that, Mr. Song. Communicating with Cold Nighthay was silky smooth. Lu Yuan's face was very ugly. Fong Wan's brain spun too fast and immediately aimed the gun at me. Song Yuan, it's impossible for a robot to disobey its creator's instructions. This is obviously a malfunction. Don't you even fix it? I asked Ling Yehe. Do you want to fix it? Ling Yihe shook his head. I don't want to. Fong Wan's eyes widened. Impossible. How can a robot be self-aware? Lu Yuan shouted excitedly. Did you see that? The robot I developed appeared to be self-aware. It's me! Lu Yuan's achievement. Ling Nighthay interrupted in a cold voice. I'm not your thing, I only belong to Song Yuan. Lu Yuan's face was full of gloom. He jumped down from the stage, striding towards Lin Yihei, reaching out to press the overhaul button on him. He was backhandedly clasped to the ground by Ling Yihei. The scene was very comical. Lu Yuan gritted his teeth and questioned me. Song Yuan, you must have broken the Z007. You must have broken it. You, as the user, have to take full responsibility. Everyone was looking at me. The emergence of self-awareness in a robot was an earth-shattering event, and they all hoped to reap business opportunities, benefits and fame from it. In front of everyone, I sighed. Z007 was indeed developed by you, however, it has been modified by me, and the current Lin Yihei is no longer your Lin Yihei. I said softly to Lin Yihei, I am sorry. I have to overhaul you now. Good, I accept the overhaul. Ling Nighthay faintly smiled, his eyes gentle and clear, unguarded, pressed the overhaul button on his chest. My heart fluttered and jumped, picked up the overhaul instrument, lowered my head, came forward, and carefully inspected the device inside. The core was all normal, the light path was flowing normally, and the devices were in perfect condition. I don't know why. Just when I buried my head to check, I always felt that there was a hot line of sight above my head, making me not quite comfortable. I raised my head, but only saw the ink pupil as calm as water, as well as smooth as usual. The breath slowly sprayed on my face. It was a normal shutdown state. This robot, for the sake of realistic anthropomorphism, will continue to activate the breathing simulator even in the shutdown state. Inspection results, everything is normal. I breathed a sigh of relief. To convince everyone of the result, I invited the technologists present to line up for the overhaul. One of them caught my attention. Gino, a friend who had grown up with Ching Ojo since childhood, and as far as I knew, he wasn't a robotics technician, but he did some overhauling actions in an old-fashioned manner. He first stared at cold night meditation for a while, then pinched his bones, with a look on his face that seemed to be a bit trance-like and a bit of emotion, and finally moved towards his chest. Emotion, and finally punched his fist towards his chest. This kid, not bad, strange what? When he saw my gaze, but suddenly made a sound. Chen Fong continues to maintain order in the back. Next. Gino gave me a piece of paper. He said, Ogashi has died of illness. My mind went blank. He continued to say, for the past 15 years, he had been fighting the disease, but unluckily, bone cancer still took away his life. In the end, the whole body is necrotic. You are not seeing his appearance in bed, that really, alas. He seemed to recall some tragic scene, his eyes suddenly red, cover his face and do not want to talk about it. Silence for a while, he said to me, April 30th day, I actually called you, but it seems that you did not answer, and then, he closed his eyes. His last wish was to see you. I was a little confused. After graduating from high school, he told me that he would not live long and broke up with me. As the years went by, I almost forgot about him. April 30th happened to be the day of the Cold Night Rock Machine. That day his pupils turned red. I was in a bad mood, ignored him, but he did not know at what time magically recovered. Well, Cold Night Underground broke down and happened to be doing maintenance that day. Gino recovered quickly from his grief, and before Ogashi died, I hired a hospice caregiver for him, and here's the hospice protocol and his bucket list. These 2 things, I'll give them to you. Gino handed the things over to me and disappeared into the crowd. I held the things in my hand and my heart tightened. There was only one sentence on the bucket list, wanting to be a robot for the little nerds. The hospice agreement said that to ensure soul solidity, Party A would settle the final payment 3 months after completing the bucket list, with a warranty of 80 years. I snapped my head up. Cold Nightshade's chest was wide open, and the device's circuitry slowly flickered under the anthropomorphic skin. One of the technicians even reached in and picked a wire out, and was loudly stopped by Chen Fong. He stood quietly amongst a group of experts, looking at me silently. It took me a long time to digest the information. In the meantime, Lu Yuan tore at the circuits in Lin Yihei's body like a madman, wanting to forcibly pull out the imprint that he had left in the proposed brain processor, but Lin Yihei suddenly grabbed it and flew off with one end of his foot. The expert dropped his jaw in shock. To be able to act on its own in the maintenance state, this robot had already exceeded their knowledge. Lu Yuan still wanted to continue struggling, but he was held down by Chen Fong and the technical experts and thrown out of the venue. Fong Wan cried and followed. After this, the 2 of them had already been blackballed by the robotics industry. Ling Nighthei slowly and methodically organized the exposed wires back in front of the crowd, closed the valve, and then walked in front of me. The voice was soft and low, and said to me, What should I do, little nerd? They are all staring at me. I am so scared. The crowd looked at Cold Nighthei with eyes like wolves and tigers, each flashing with an excited light. Then, he gently kissed me in front of all eyes. Chen Fong took a picture with a quick hand and posted it on social media with an anti-smile. With the accompanying text, having a rebellious and safe relationship with AI, who says no? That day, Cold Nighthei escorted me home. Chen Fong organized different technical seminars, large and small, and we signed many more contracts. After a while, the Technical Institute and the front end of the market were all fully equipped, and while I was so busy that I was going crazy, Lin Nighthei demonstrated an amazing working ability at this time. He can work 24 hours a day, his negotiation skills are full of points, and his technical skills are 10 times better than Lu Yuan's. Even if he encounters a lag, he can search and query robotics through the proposed brain processor, and then quickly grasp the core knowledge like a Tinkerbell cat eating memory bread. Lu Yuan still kept harassing me like flies. He brought a group of foreigners to break into my research institute and touch the photolithography machine like a locust transit. When I arrived, the group of foreigners wore neither protective suits nor gloves, they had no authorization, and they couldn't even lift their heads from the microscopes to face each other inside. They spread their hands and said that these photolithography machines are very uninternationalized, even with Chinese signs, who can read ah? Just kidding, why don't they use Chinese for photolithography machines made in China? Lu Yuan saw me, lifting his chin in disdain. My batch of foreign research experts have the most advanced technology. They said that the robot you made is very backward. Trouble to give them permission to tell you the real. What does a real robot look like? I don't care to argue with him. I didn't want to argue with him. Saying 100 words is better than seeing. It turned out that the foreigners were so amateurish that they couldn't even put the chrome side on, and several times they touched the ceiling ring with their tweezers. Lu Yuan was so humiliated that he was ashamed of himself. One of the professors of the institute was furious and immediately called the police to expel them. Lu Yuan was not dead yet. During one of the seminars, Lu Yuan barged in and read to me one by one the vicious comments on the internet about me falling in love with a robot. Then he loudly questioned me. He is just a robot. I am not better than him. I looked at him coldly. He is loyal, gentle as 100 times more handsome than you. Whether it is the emotional value, or in bed, he can give me the most extreme experience. You can't compare to him anywhere. Lu Yuan, even if you have a dog, you will not run away with someone else. Lu Yuan was struck by lightning. He trembled and asked me, why don't you love a specific person? I think he is stupid and excessive. He is very concrete. You are very abstract. My rebuttal to him was posted online. The skepticism gradually disappeared, while the voice in favor of me is getting louder and louder, and Lu Yuan, turned into a soft man pretending to be a big man, originally thought to be a genius, turned out to occupy 2 heads, cremation man. Just then, the hospice caregiver came to the door. I know how to avoid. After the two talked, the hospice division shook my hand. I have long heard of your great name. It is better to meet you than to see you for a long time. This is my business card, if you have the need. I still have a little bit of skill in this area. I smiled. I didn't realize that hospice care abroad had already transcended physics, and it just so happens that I know someone who is in great need of hospice care. I thought Fong Wan would reject me, but I didn't expect her to agree readily. She came to see me in a sharp suit, a far cry from her previous image as a little white flower. When I took a closer look, her dressing style today was a bit like mine. I briefed her on the business and capabilities of hospice caregivers, and while she listened, the expression was very uncomfortable. I thought she was having a seizure. I didn't have much animosity toward a dying person. I just wanted her to die with dignity so that Lu Yuan wouldn't take his grievances out on me. Which hospital are you attending? You can go to the doctor first if you're not feeling well. She spoke with a voice as small as a mosquito. I am not sick, I lied to him. I froze. The hospice worker froze. She bit her lip and continued, I thought he was such a brilliant genius expert. I worshipped him in college. I was a poor physics student who studied hard and switched to a robotics program. I did research while others ate, and I did research while others fell in love. No money to buy materials. I borrowed money, playing green tea lady to cheat men money. I use all means, just to get close to him. But now I realize that he's so good because you're good, and his achievements all stem from you. Mr. Song, Mr. Song, I'm sorry, it's my fault for breaking you up. She gathered her courage and said to me, can I enter your lab? She sounded eager. I don't want a salary. I really like being a robot. I can do odd jobs, serve tea and soup and cook. No way. I don't like the presence of a third person in the lab. He pulled my sleeve, serving tea and water, soup and cooking. I global first L. I frankly said, I do not accept people with moral stains on my side. She is very smart, knows what I like to wear so deliberately imitated, knows that I like to be frank so all out. She seems to like to figure out and cater to other people's preferences. These tricks work for Lu Yuan, but not for me. She was a little aggravated, wanted to cry, but because I don't like to cry and forced to restrain, I was determined. She had to settle for nothing, a step 3 back and go. After she left, Lu Yuan came to the door again. He asked me with a stern face, did Wan meet with you yesterday? What did you tell her? Why did she suddenly break up with me? Song Yuan, if you want to remarry me, just say so, no need to get all bent out of shape. I wasn't in the mood to bullshit with him and told Lin Yehe to play him the images recorded with the visual device yesterday. Lu Yuan walked away with a stiff back. I quickly published a paper on the application of robots in replacing marital spouses in professional journals, and once the paper was published, it caused a big uproar and created a great impact. But Lu Yuan reported my academic fraud in real name. He also specially made a robot exactly the same as Lin Yehe, dissecting the internal parts a little bit, trying to tell the public that I stole his academic achievements. And I fell into silence as I looked at the earthy love words that Lin Yehe too kept spitting out. Some netizens took the lead in mocking Lu Yuan before me. Laughing to death, Lu Yuan, look at yourself, this lowly version is the same as Master He in which point other than his looks? I just want to ask, is he the same as Master He? Into the overhaul state can still start the self-protection mechanism. High IQ, low IQ of the low-profile version, can't even copy it well. I went online to clarify that Cold Night Underworld was indeed developed by him, but I changed it at a later stage. And this, I have clearly stated in my thesis. No one believes me. Sister Song, I understand everything you said, and your words still love him. Upstairs, this kind of man is not worth it. I raise a big flag for Master Hades. This kind of man can't do anything but mate. Lu Yuan kept recommending himself to professional organizations and companies, hoping to seek half a part-time job. But he has already pulled down his own cloth of shame, no one wants to give him a damn. I saw him again at a fried chicken restaurant. I had just finished attending the ceremony of conferring honorary professorships at the University of M. After a busy day, when I passed by the fried chicken store, I thought that the technicians in the technical factory were still working overtime, so I asked Chen Fong to pack fried chicken to go back to comfort everyone, and sat down to order a fried chicken to eat in the meantime. Cold Night He fed his mouth, others ate delicious golden fried chicken, but in my mouth tastes like chewing wax. It so happened that Cold Night He and Gino had just finished their meeting and activated the call system to ask me to go home for a late-night snack, so I obediently answered and left. When I left, the diners in the store heard me call Cold Night He baby, and they were envious. Out of the store door walked a little way, then saw the Cold Night meditation instantly to my side to hold me. Alas, a second of absence is like 3 autumns, this baby had to personally come to pick up the master. He asked me if the wedding company had contacted me, and I realized that I had left my cell phone in the fried chicken store. Rushed back, but found that my original location sat a hunched-over man, is devouring my leftover fried chicken. I asked him if he had seen my cell phone on the tabletop, and when he heard my voice, he jerked. Voice, jolted and looked up. It was Lu Yuan. I froze instantly. He was skinny, bearded, his eyes were tired and full of red bloodshot, and his body emitted an unspeakable stench. I couldn't believe that after only a few months, he had fallen into such a state. It is also true that he has never been the character of Today's Wine, Today's Drunkenness. The divorce for the expression of deep love for the Net family, even if there is private money, was Fong Wan shrouded like a stinking and long bucket list exhausted. His expression at that time was wonderful, embarrassed, ashamed and with a little resentment. Before I had a chance to ask any questions, he grabbed the rest of the fried chicken and ran off in a huff. It happened to be pouring rain outside the house, and he was like a rat, fleeing through the muck. Cold Night He's eagle eye system swept over him in time, his voice was cold, the cell phone was stolen by him. He flashed into the rain, backhandedly tackled Lu Yuan, and accurately searched more than 20 cell phones from his arms. I watched in disbelief as he was wriggled into the police station. He screamed all the way, "I am Professor Song's ex-husband, you can't arrest me." The police chided, "Lower your voice, is it glorious?" Lu Yuan was sentenced to 7 years in prison for theft. That futile prof. Lu finally sank under a world of continued busyness. Lin Yehe didn't have an ID card and couldn't get a marriage license with me. We had to organize a grand lawn wedding. At the wedding, Gino was very drunk. I asked the Cold Night meditation, want to change his name to Ching Shuzhou. He thought about it, his parents were afraid of wasting money, refused to take him to the hospital for treatment, and finally he could only drag his sick body to work to pay for his own medical expenses, but still missed the best treatment period. With his parents' money-loving nature, if they learned that he had borrowed hospice care to transferring his soul, I'm afraid they'll be dead set on finding him. Forget it, I think the 3 words Cold Night He are just fine. Between the sunshine and the grass, he hugged me tightly. "Ah Yuan, thank you for giving me a healthy and strong body." Someone on the stage coaxed, "Master He, say thank you for the princess's gift." He smiled with me, back, "She is my king."